And in fact, I am looking forward to learning from each other. By no means is this presentation like, that I know everything. That's a caveat from my end, that it's just an experience that I wish to share. I have been delivering such workshops at various places globally, and I feel it's always a nice learning curve. So thanks for the invite. And we start with a little bit. So before we go ahead, the format of this presentation would be, I start off with some details about strategic thinking and creative thinking with a few anecdotes from my journey so far. That's what DELITELABS wanted me to share with all of you. And then I share really practical tips and tricks how we can apply in our day-to-day basis, also with a psychological point of view. And then at the end, I thought we can have an open floor for discussion where we could also get to know each other better and answer or specific questions and know anything in more detail. So starting off, let's warm up our creative muscles by a little bit of an exercise. And feel free to jump in, unmute yourself, or write on the chat. There are two things I want you to think about. On the left, I wrote about the color of an apple. So think in your mind, what comes to your mind when I say color of an apple? If anybody feels like sharing, please unmute yourself and say, or write on the chat. At the end, we will come back to this. Okay, I hope you have thought about that. And on the right, I give a little picture where, of course, it's a symbol. Two people are observing it from different angles. Some say it's a 9, it's a 6. What I want you to think of is, what else can you think about this symbol? It could be a letter, a symbol, an image, a drawing, or something whatever that comes into your mind. Again, if anybody wants to share now, please do. I go to the chat. Some people are writing. Okay, yes, people are writing about the color. Thank you for participating. Thank you. Song, initial, yes. Good, very good. So, you can keep that in mind. If there are more ideas coming throughout the course of this workshop, please note them down or feel free to write on the chat. And we come back to this slide at the end. Thanks for participating. So going ahead with what is really strategic thinking. For me, strategic thinking and creative thinking are very, very closely interlinked. There are various definitions of strategic thinking. One that I like the most is of this kind, where there is like a feedback loop, where everything is sort of interrelated. So you cannot say that there is one starting point or the other end point, but really it starts from learning, anticipating, observing, thinking about a problem critically, creatively, not thinking about a problem for some time, coming back to it, interpreting it in different ways, from your perspective, from others' perspective, in your cohort, in your social and professional circle, in your family circle, thinking about it from a completely random person's perspective, deciding about a few critical points. And the decision places could lead to different different roads and pathways, aligning all your decisions together, learning from them, and really thinking about it again and again in a feedback loop. And there are different types of strategic thinkers. There could be, like, you could think about of it as an iceberg of insights. Some people are sitting on the top, looking at really the tip of the iceberg. And some are really, if I want to show it in a better detail, this picture I really like. Some are like, a few of them would be on the top, on the beach, looking at the insight from a different perspective. Some will just skim the surface. Some would be like scuba divers who will go a bit below, and really some would be deep sea divers, free divers who would go deep into an insight. Now, on the left and right, there are things like impact of insights and frequency of insights and how much you think about it, how deep you think about it. it's not to say that all of us at all point of time have to be free divers, have to really think deeply about the problem. It depends on the type of problem as well. But it's important for us to know that only a few percentage of time we are at the top or at the bottom. So it depends on having that cognizance about the problem that you're solving and how deep you want to go into it for an insight. So there is this one specific triangle about strategic thinking, which talks about discipline. So really, strategic thinking has other constraints in itself. So when you think about a problem, when you think about the solution of the problem, there could be a few things that limit your solution. So it's good to be aware of it. There could be constraints related to talent, time, budget, feasibility, other resources, and so on. It's good to be aware of it. But when we are thinking creatively and innovatively, and I will come back to it in the future slides, we have to take a back seat about free thinking. We come back to it. So I come to this second section of my presentation where if you would be interested, I could share a few stories. Really, some of them are silly, some of them are like insightful and out of nowhere. So because DELITELABS wanted me to share some parts, so I'll go ahead with sharing some of them, and you could please say on chat and participate, because I really like it to be an interactive workshop. I would go through the chat as well if there is something that you want to know more or less of. Okay, so the first story is from my laboratory in IIT Bombay in India. This was during my master's. It was more than 15 years ago. The problem that I was solving was a medical device to close the hole in the heart. Some babies, unfortunately, are born with a hole in their heart. And there is an external device. It looks like the design of our device was inspired by a flower, which actually is like a balloon or like an umbrella, which goes inside from the veins of your body and pops up at the place where there is a hole. So in order to test its efficacy, I had to design this in vitro model in the laboratory. It just means that how can we test whether the device would work very well inside the body or not. So it's a very simple setup. It looks a bit maybe overwhelming, but it's nothing but a water tank. If you see please tell me, do you see my cursor with a blue arrow, Iva? So there is a blue arrow here.
Yes, it can be seen.
Yeah, good, thanks. So, this is just a calibration device where I wanted to put some the implant inside the device, and as the implant expanded, the water level should rise in that capillary. So I was working with this problem for quite a few weeks, even 1 to 1.5 months in that 9 months of my dissertation period. And I could not solve this problem. In theory, everything was working according to the principles of physics, that if something is moving, then the level of water should rise. And I was really confused what's happening. And I was on the top of leaving the dissertation unfinished, or leaving this part of my experiment altogether away from my dissertation. And then suddenly what happened one night when I was applying nail varnish on my hands, I saw the bottle of my nail polish remover. The cap of the nail polish remover is like a snap fit and not a threaded cap. It's because so that the alcohol from the remover does not, evaporate quickly. And that's when it struck me. So far, this blue arrow here, I had put a cap inside which had threads. So the water was actually going through the threads and giving me a false reading. And the next day I went and put the cap like a snap fit, and voila, everything worked. Everything was working according to the principles of physics, and everything was, following the trend that I anticipated. And then we were successful in publishing this result in a scientific journal of a high standard, as well as filing a patent, and we got the patent as well. But this was really close to the time when I was about to submit my dissertation. So this is just one story. The second one, maybe it's not so interesting, but it is part of my PhD dissertation in University of Cambridge. This is an ultrasound setup that I had. Again, I was playing with water. I don't know what it is with water tank and in my course of my career. But these are just ultrasound transducers. When you put something in between, and I just picked up something like I think I remember a rubber plate and a brass plate. And when I put them in between them, I saw these patterns of waves following this, the sound wave transmission that just gives me. And then when I analyzed it more and, I compared it with the analytical model, with the physics and so on, I could see that there is a really good trend as compared to how the sound wave propagates inside the material. And I discovered that, you can find out the properties of a material, whether it is hard or stiff and so on. And we published this result. The overall application or the final view was to put biological materials and to use this device as a diagnostic tool in the future for cancer research, or to see whether or not diabetes is at what level and so on. So this is the second story. The third story is a bit silly, actually. This is a picture of me with my husband. One night I put up this picture on my Facebook. This was more than a decade ago. And one of my, the next slide, one of my previous, this is in the box here, one of my previous teachers, he said, the beauty and the bard. Okay, so I liked the comment. I liked it. I liked thinking about it, but I wasn't really sure whether I knew the real meaning of the word bard. So what I did was, I knew, and this is also something I'm interested. I have been interested in languages, and this is something that I discovered even more after coming to Europe, where I have now learned 2 additional languages. And just because of my interest in knowing words and making my own dictionary, I Googled this up. So bard. Bard is actually from the Shakespearean language part, where a wise man or something like that. But I also found on Google that BARD, BARD, stands for Broadband Acoustic Resonance Dissolution Spectroscopy, BARDS. And now BARD is a buzzword, but at that time, I wanted to go deep. I saw this. It was so interesting that it was related to the research that I was doing. I just showed you about Cambridge University, the one with the water tank. And I researched more and more. And then I found that there is a device called BARD in the university, in the metallurgy and material characterization department, and I collaborated with them. I found a few ways to test my device. This is a picture from my PhD dissertation, where we found that, okay, I can use BARD and I can change it to broadband ultrasound spectroscopy. And this was really a nice piece of work, which helped me gain like IEEE student best work award at one of the conferences. But this is all, like, I'm just telling you how the idea sparked. So these are all parts of my stories. And what has really helped me is this is a technique I learned at Stanford India Biodesign. Probably we can call it the fourth and the last story. So in Stanford Biodesign program, our task was, we were a team of 4 or 5 people coming from different backgrounds. So one was a design engineer, one was a doctor, one was an artist, and I'm myself biomedical engineer. And we were forced to like spend 30 to 90 days together to find a solution, to observe around us, to find a solution to a problem, and to really go ahead with the prototype of the solution. So this is the brainstorming part. Like I told you, there could be constraints about your, research or the position that you are in, the feasibility, the time, the budget, and so on. But when you're brainstorming, and when you're brainstorming, especially in a group, try being non-judgmental, try not thinking about how to execute the solution, but to really think about the ideas. So one of the ways that was really helpful was to look at the idea, the problem from different perspectives. So this problem that we selected was to find the vein in the hand. We found that some, especially the cancer patients and especially the children, the vein is really difficult to find out. And and in a day, there could be about 10 to 12 pricks for each person, and it is so painful and so difficult to find the vein. So that was our mission to solve this problem. Now, looking at it from different perspectives, we made different mind maps with different analogies, like sunken pipes. So there are these groundwork, there's a road, and how can we even find the sunken pipe inside the ground? There could be various ideas, and each line here is an idea. We'll not go into these details, but I'm just giving you an idea about how you could think about your problems. Then the other angles or other analogies, we were looking at how the whole process is performed by a venipuncturist, or the nurse who is putting the needle down. At each step, can we think about a solution? What is the problem and what could be the solution? And make as many number of ideas. So the plethora of ideas also matters when you are freely thinking, when you're thinking about a problem from different angles, from as many angles as possible. The third and the fourth, there were many, but there was one because we were solving this problem for India. So what could be applicable to India, and so on. So there are various ways to think about the same thing, and then you would actually come up with a solution. So I did not put the rest of the presentation here from Stanford Biodesign, but we came up with a solution. We have now patented and trademarked, and the patent is in progress about this venipuncture device. So that brings me to the next part, and feel free to please write on the chat if you have any more questions, comments, or so on. But what I wanted to go now into a little bit more detail is the process of bioinnovation, the process of innovation. I say bioinnovation because that's the process that I learned, but it is really something that can be applied to any field or any genre. So there are these 3 I's that I learned in Stanford Biodesign program. First is the identify. That's the critical part about observing, about being non-judgmental, and about finding a problem. So we were in my experience, we were put, all 5 of us, we were put in the hospital. We were talking to the nurses, going to the surgeries, talking to the patient, talking to the medical, representatives, salespeople, and so on, and trying to really find what is that one problem that we will solve, or what is the most important problem, the pain point. So we'll make a non-judgmental list of problems. That's the first part, needs finding. So we write as many problems that we observe, and then we sit down together and make a list, and then we screen those needs. And then there's also a workshop about how to define the needs. The needs should be really specific, accurate, and it related to the solution that you are looking for. So after you look at the needs, you screen them depending on the various criteria, the weightage. There are different methods to screen the needs as well. Once you come back and you see this feedback loop in the green, which just means that you might need to go back when you're doing these needs screening, you might need to go back to the needs finding, might need to observe or talk to more people. There's this concept called voice of customers, VOC. So really talking to the stakeholders, collaborators, whoever is in your whole cycle from idea to the launch. The second part is invent. Now, this is the interesting part where we already touched about the brainstorming, being really, so here we all get together and speak or think about the problem and speak in a way which is a very safe environment. So there is one method specifically very interesting, because when people of really high vigor and dynamic personalities come together, they might sometimes clash and not really work on the problem. So there's this method of active listening. So each person gets their 1 or 2 minutes of the time that they can speak about a problem, and nobody should object at that time or think about the what ifs and what nots and so on. And that's the environment that leads to those plethora of ideas. So that's the whole area about concept generation, and then you screen those concepts, and then the implement phase, the third I, which talks about where we think about the strategy, the development, how to make it feasible, how to make it business friendly, how to launch the business, how to gather fundings, and how to present it, how to feedback it with the customer's need, and go back. Really, this is an iterative process. So I told you a little bit in detail about these in this slide, but when we were doing it, this is from the director at Stanford University for the program. He wrote a book, and you could even get to the details of all these basic things, which is, as I said, could be applied to any other field. This is from the clinical perspective, from the biomedical perspective, but the concepts and the methodologies are applicable in each field. And it's really a very well-defined process. If we follow that, things become much more streamlined and, easier to follow through. So that's these are the only part about the theoretical understanding of the innovation process that I'm talking to you about, but I wanted to make it very, very practical, today's workshop. So I go to the next important part, where really I wrote this in my write-up as well, to know yourself. How do you make sure you can contribute to the whole process of innovation? Are you the one, and how can you, and things like that. So I really like to think about this psychotherapy and psychological perspective. I came across this in a library, and I got to know now that it's really very well regarded and very well known. It's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Please write on the chat if you have seen it before and if you actually believe in it as well. So here, when you look at this pyramid, the basic needs are at the bottom, the base of the pyramid, where you have psychological, physiological needs, safety, love, belonging, esteem. And the top of the pyramid is actually self-actualization. There you see the second word is there, morality, and then creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, lack of prejudice, acceptance of facts. So this is our whole quest of human nature, as Abraham Maslow said, that we are all striving to go to that pinnacle of this pyramid called self-actualization. We are looking to be more creative and spontaneous, and we need to be accepted, and we need to contribute to the larger society in general. So it's really very well linked with what we are talking about today, about creativity. So now, another concept which I really like, and which I think makes very much sense here, is from a book from Dan Pink. I really admire his work. I read this book called Drive, where how do we define how do we motivate ourselves to do something? Now, this is a very, some could think this is a very a concept which is used in the companies or by the HR and so on, but it's not like that. It's for your own project, for your own thinking as well, where he says, whenever you have the autonomy to do something, you also have the right skills or the mastery, and you have the purpose to solve something. That is equivalent to the motivation. And here he talks about motivation in you'll get the slides to see the details, but he talks about the motivation in the intrinsic form. So on the bottom of this line, you see on the left hand side is negative consequences, on the right hand side is positive. So we should all strive towards finding that intrinsic motivation to solve a problem, to solve something deeply of purpose to our own self. And I will talk about how to find that in a bit. But for a moment, try to gather this concept about intrinsic motivation. It is only when something that you feel you have the mastery of, you have the autonomy to solve it in the way that you want, and you also feel the purpose, that is where it will lead to intrinsic motivation, and thereby the creativity and the success that it follows. So this concept of Maslow's pyramid is also put in employee engagement by different, human resources and people who are studying these feelings and behavior of employees, where the highly engaged ones on the top of the pyramid are the ones who think about these things, what I can do for others, what I can inspire to make the world a better place. And probably all of us in some way or the other are actually working towards that goal. So now I really want you also to write down, not now, maybe later, about the things, all the things that you think you are most driven by. And those will be the ones which will drive your intrinsic motivation. It could be a side hobby. It need not be your full-time profession, but you have to make a note of that, so that when you are feeling trapped in the cycle of feeling blocked in your creative process, you go back to your hobby, or you go back to that one thing that you enjoy the most. And probably that insights from there will help you in your main problem in your professional life, maybe in your personal struggles and so on. So it's important to think about what drives you. Now, this is a picture on the left-hand side. We should actually be objective and question ourselves. Do I do selective abstraction? Do I draw conclusions just on the basis of one piece of evidence, and and draw full spectrum of conclusions based on that? Do I take things personally? Do I say, oh, well, this is my fault, and things which are not under my control, still I take the blame for it? Do I magnify things? Do I blow things out of proportion? Like they say, making a mountain out of a molehill. Do I think of one thing and make, many assumptions about it? Do I minimize or, make things downplay? Do I do arbitrary inference about different things? Do I overgeneralize things? If you do, you have to critically question yourself and rather develop an attitude to step back and analyze different points of views and then draw an informed conclusion. Don't take things personally. Differentiate between what is under your control and what is not under your control. That will ease you off from the pressure of getting to a solution faster. Magnify, think big, think from a helicopter view, think about strategies. When in strategic thinking, we talk about the helicopter view a lot, the big picture. You might be solving a small thing at a particular point of time, but always try and relate it with the bigger goal, whether it is for the mission and vision of your organization that you work for, whether it is for your own personal goal, always relate it back to that. It is important to appreciate the events happening in your life, to appreciate yourself, maybe also the others around you, and things like that. So basic things. I think the next part would be interesting about how to do that actually. And so this is something that I came up with a few years ago, which has maybe worked out for me, also been inspired by talking to different people, reading different books. And if it makes sense, you apply parts of these, or please write or share with me at the end what has worked best for you. How did you know what is the best working self? So I've written down on the left-hand side, think about the proudest achievements of yours over the last 5 years, or maybe more, or even the things that you are confident of achieving in the future. So you need not draw inspiration only from your past, but you can project yourself into the future and write down those things. And then think about the times that you were most creative. Think about the times that you made things happen. And this is, the motto of Luxembourg, let's make it happen. So think about the things that despite all odds, you made it work, or the things that you really enjoyed to the point that you never felt like procrastinating that. Or even if you procrastinated it for a bit, what helped you overcome that procrastination and make it happen? Then think about the return on investment of your time. How much time did you invest, and how quickly did you get the results? How did you win or fail on those? It's important to create a diary of your failures as well. In the whole process of creativity and innovation, failure is a very, very important lesson. in Stanford by Design program, they taught us from the mentors taught us, fail early, fail often, and fail fast, and learn from it and move on. So think about those times. And then really coming down to the basics. And this is something that techniques that I think are related to the concept of visualization as well. When you were doing all of this, when you're looking up about your best achievement, what were you doing? Where were you? Were you, in which setting were you? Were you in an office, or were you in the beach on a holiday? Were you sitting down? Were you standing up? What happened when the ideas struck you? Were you listening to music? Was it day or night? Were you alone, or were there people around you? So these things are important pointers to tell us, how you work best. And then based on these answers, you could map out the settings where you can work best. Okay. I have given a thought to my own, and this is the last part, which is, of this slide where I thought about myself. I think I'm very focused towards the end, or when the deadline is approaching, because probably I cut off all distractions and think about just that problem. I have also realized that I work best on Fridays. I don't know why, but most of my things, I've seen this trend throughout my academic life as well. Lots of ideas were striking to me on a Friday evening. Maybe it is the concept of weekend coming or the end of the work week, but things like that happen. So to make a log, so then on a Friday, I make sure that I am, most relaxed and I can focus on the problem, because sometimes things have happened very well on a Friday. So it's a silly thing to say, but maybe it's not true. It's just a coincidence. But to be aware of these things can help you, create or carve that time in your calendar. And I'm a big fan of putting things on your calendar, because otherwise nothing will happen. I take this inspiration from a good friend who worked in Harvard University. With his permission, he was working in the field of microfluidics, but you can see he drew this by himself. He's an artist by heart. So he was, in his lone time, he was just conceptualizing his, scientific work in the form of cartoons and emoticons and icons and so on. Some of them have been published as well. This is the second one where he has published a number of articles or scientific publications. But when he was sitting down, just without distractions, with his color set and a piece of paper or his drawing book, and coming up with different concepts. I really like this because, you can, it's like being a child. And when you give a child a problem, he or she can think about, different ways of coloring an apple, or thinking about a problem, or coloring the house, or something like that. So it's really inspiring for me to see how leading scientists also think creatively. I have another few slides to show you how you can identify yourself. Starting from the left-hand side, doing a self-SWOT analysis. I'm sure you must be familiar with SWOT. It stands for strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Focus on your strengths and seize those opportunities. Be aware of your weaknesses. There are, I like a few psychometric tests. Some of them have been used also by recruiters and companies, like Gallup, Belbin, 16 personalities. Some people also believe in horoscopes or visual tests and things like that, numerology, lots of different things. So I'm not saying the list is exhaustive. It's just giving you a few ideas. Second, how do you work best? Now, questions like, are you detail oriented, or are you a big picture person? Are you observant, perfectionist, an 80% good enough finisher? Do you like doing the bigger tasks? Do you like managing people? Do you like to be by yourself? Also, maybe, are you mostly introvert or extrovert? Do you like getting inspiration from different sources? And so on. So what works best for you? And then think about those things in much more detail. What makes you doing some self-reflection, introspection, assessment, sitting down with your journal, And then, I mean, I'm not saying by any means that I have perfected that, but in the past, some or the other things have helped me in this search. And then you're not alone in this self-seeking search. You can always, there are various, online tools nowadays as well. You can map your progress and you can track it throughout the years. You can also ask for, recommendations or analysis or feedback from managers, peers, subordinates, friends, family. Maybe ask for LinkedIn recommendations, and you do like a word cloud search about what are the words that pop up most in those recommendations or feedback, and then think about enhancing those skills or bettering yourself in different ways. Now, I think we are good on time. So we have 15 more minutes at least to finish up. I wrote down a few tips and tricks now about how to make yourself a little bit more creative each day. So some of them are my own. Most of them are the things that have worked for me, and some of them are taken from inspiration from TED Talks. For example, there is this one where you draw a circle and you draw so many things about it. Like with a circle, how many things can you draw? And then maybe, for example, with kids, I do that. Draw a number, make an animal out of it. Make how many animals you can do. You could, in your free time, you could follow different pages on social media, on Instagram or even LinkedIn and places where you get inspired spontaneously or organically gets inspired. I like DIY and crafts and so on. That has given me some inspiration in one thing or the other. A nice way to think about a problem is also role plays. If you have an idol in your mind or that you follow, think about a problem and think about how would they have solved that problem. How can you take some inspiration out of it? Creating an analogy is also very, very powerful. Describe your problem in terms of a story, and then try to look at that problem from different angles. A good way of exercising your brain is also to write down whatever thoughts you have, maybe even every day, without even editing or censoring yourself. It could be of any topic. Maybe one day you may write a book out of it. One day you could make a lot of LinkedIn posts and become an influencer, but you would for sure shape your ideas better if you write things down on paper or whichever medium you would like to write down on. And then very, very important part of communication, and especially in today's world where everyone's attention span is also limited. And at the same time, we are talking interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, where in a team, in a room filled with people coming from different backgrounds, like some could be lawyers or scientists or artists or, different walks of life. How can you explain anything so simply that even your grandmom or a 6-year-old can understand? This is a very important and a very useful habit to have, or skill to develop, because this is something that will make you go ahead even with the funding and explaining your product to the potential customers and so on. I like these pitching events and so on. So in the past, I've been fortunate to win a few pitching awards where there was 1 minute time to explain those concepts that I showed you in the beginning of the slides. And it was very well received. I'll skip this part. I come back to this different perspective. And the idea of the apple. So first, with this different perspective, I see already very interesting results, replies written by a few people about it being a lock. I think someone, maybe you want to unmute yourself. Someone wants to say something. I think someone wrote hook for this. Sorry. So this is this is just a symbol. It could be a 6 or a 9. It could be a Q or a G, a B or a D, an E, yin or a yang, or anything, in Hindi, there is a letter which resembles this as well. So what I really like is looking at things from different perspectives will give you different ideas. And please write on the chat if you have any further ideas or if you agree to it. And this is why I like that's why I've put this Rubik's Cube there. And this is the Rubik's Cube I solved today morning to show you. When you're solving the Rubik's Cube, and actually it's not so difficult to solve. This is something that I first solved in about 12 years ago. But at that time, there were even less YouTube videos. Nowadays, there are even quicker ones. I took a few hours, maybe one day I just focused on this to learn it. But what are the lessons that I have learned through these Rubik's Cube? If you don't follow the steps, or if you are not aware of the spatial orientation, you can go back to zero and mess everything up. But still, it teaches me the virtue of patience and perseverance. And the second one, this is something my daughter got 2 days ago for her birthday with the unicorn. This is even a little bit more difficult to solve with the pictures, because the centers also need to be aligned. But I'm just, I'm not bragging. I hope you don't take it that way, but it's a way to tell you that you can creatively exercise your muscles by picking up anything that you want to solve, or which takes your mind off the pressure of the day-to-day. So, and nowadays anything can be learned online, so why not try it? Other tips and tricks which have helped me in one way or the other, there are different ways of presenting your stuff. There is Prezi, which is very, very interestingly put, so you can avoid the death by PowerPoint. I'm not using it today, but I've used it in the past. It is really interactive, very impactful. There are different concept draws, mind maps. There is this DIY learning kit. These are games by this is just one company out of many, KiwiCo. You could watch YouTube videos on different things. Also, learning new languages has helped me. So what I did is either watching my favorite shows in another subtitle, so that at least I can write those languages well, or I know the spelling of those things, or I can associate what is being said in English, or how can I say that in French or in Luxembourgish, and so on. That has helped me. What you can do to save your time as well, if you're watching something in your native language, you can double the speed. Many videos also say you can watch something in 1.5 times the speed. That also sort of exercises your muscles and saves you time. But if you're watching something in a foreign language that you're trying to learn, you can slow down the speed and learn that. And then the next one is slow motion multitasking. This is a concept taken from a creative thinking video or TED talk, where he talks about multitasking is a good thing, but we don't have to rush through it. Only when we take slow pauses, or we think about one problem, leave it aside and do the other task for a bit, that helps you become more creative. And here I was fortunate to live in Cambridge, where Charles Darwin was studying the evolution of species. So he has been thinking of different different genres, not only botany and zoology, biology, but also economics, human development. He was studying his son. So 43 years later, he published a book about the development of a human, I forget the name, but it was mainly about studying his own, family and so on. So what this talk tells you is an average person, or a successful scientist, actually has switched fields at least 43 times in the first 100 research papers that he has done, which goes to show that most creative and innovative thinkers are not stuck to one field, and it is not a bad thing to do that. If you think about scientists like Galileo or even Einstein, many of them were also musicians, or looking at mathematics or science or different fields together at the same time. So this probably this just gives you a space in your mind to think from different perspective about the same problem. Of course, talking to people from different fields of life also helps. The next one is an exercise of turncoat extempore. This is something that I practiced in my time in the college as well. So say something. So if you're talking about an argument, say it, and then clap and say the opposite argument, and then clap and say the opposite argument. That just gives you an exercise to the brain to think about another point of view. Okay, think about wearing different hats, and think about really being that person. And I'll come to an example in the next ones. I don't know if I should go through each one of them, but you could have a moment to read through it. And there are just a few more slides left. So if someone wants to say something, please unmute yourself or write, and then we can go back to the next few slides.
Megha, I have a question for you.
Yes, Suzanne.
So tell me, I think it's an amazing list, by the way, and I've been looking down it and writing also some notes as well. But did you find that there were certain ones of these that worked best for you at certain times? And which one was the time used when you were stressed the most? And which one would you use when you were most relaxed? Is there something there that you had a preference for?
Very interesting question, Suzanne. In fact, I did not think about it that much. I mean, of course, it depends on the time or the phase of life that I was in. One of the things that I could vouch for from this list is this: having a blank page and a pencil, and trying to write anything that is coming to your mind, drawing things out, or just like I don't know, I have not, like, this is a compilation of many things that has worked in the past, but there have been times when I'm stressed. Okay, for example, even giving a talk like this, or before that, there is this imposter syndrome coming in, or things like that. So I read about it somewhere. Make a self-appreciation email or a presentation also about the things that I talked about the proudest achievements that you have had, things that you have really done in the past that have won you become successful or solve a problem, and have that ready in your moments of self-doubt and pressure. Maybe take inspiration from your own self. Why not? And
okay. Yes.
and yeah, look at things that really make you happy. For some people, it could be music, some painting, dancing, or having a sense of humor. Many things, actually for each person it's different, and for each one's own journey throughout whatever you're doing, wherever you are, it could be different. But yeah, thanks for that question.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, anyone else with anything else that comes to mind here? So I go to the other, actually, I have a lot of things to share. Probably this is more towards the end, but how can we make it an action plan? So I came about this first one from a TED Talk, actually. He said, the hip hop rappers have to say a lot of words quickly. Okay, so what you can plan to do is, while you're brushing your teeth, you can think of 3 random words each day. And the first and the second and the third word should not be interrelated. Okay. And with time, with weeks passing by, you will realize that you are getting better and better at it. And this is something that is a proven method, also, just to think of various things at once, and also to switch off your mind from thinking the mundane or thinking about the next thing that is on your list. The next idea I have is to take inspiration from Ford assembly style for time management. There's a typo over there, but okay. So does anybody know about the Ford assembly style? Want to share? I've been talking for a while. Want to say something about the Ford style? So the company which makes the Ford cars, they were the first to come up with the style or with the technique to assemble the cars. And that's very well regarded now. Anybody knows about it, has heard about it? Yes, you have, Michelle? I see you nodding.
Yes, I did, and actually was with the T model, was one of the first model of automobile, and actually it's, I don't know, it could sound a little bit depressing, but they start actually the alienation of the way how to were structured the time in the industry, and I don't know, that is what I know about the time management.
It's thanks for sharing, Michelle. So time management is a separate part which I have added to this, but actually Ford assembly style, you are partly correct. So before Ford, all the workers in the machine shop, in the workshop, used to travel from one station to the other in order to assemble the car. What Ford did was to bring the machines to the worker, and the worker stays stationary. Okay, so this concept we could use for our own time management. So the whole crux of the matter is how to avoid distraction, how to create a space so that your mind stays focused at one place and the other things are moving. So for that I thought, and I sometimes use it, I'm guilty of not using it all the time, but like I said, have a piece of paper or something that works best for you. So while doing a task or project, you might remember, oh, I need to send a WhatsApp message to someone. Okay, I need to call this person, and so on. It's a part of your to-do list, but just don't do it at that moment if it can wait. So if you're doing something focused in the flow, try to write that down somewhere and forget about it. So at the end of the day, you can take out half an hour to do all the WhatsApp messages or to send all the emails together or to make all the calls at a particular time, so that you don't switch your mind from one task to the other too much. There's this another third one is creativity hack, productivity hack. On WhatsApp, you can create a notes group to yourself, and you can send whatever idea comes to you, because for me it works well because there are so many links I want to just save, and WhatsApp is the most used app on my phone right now. So you could do that. You can add a friend and then remove that friend, and that's just and pin it on the top so that you can have everything at one place. You could have any goal or any habit about watching one inspirational thing each week or every 2 weeks, listening to a podcast, watching a TED talk, and making those implementing those ideas in your day-to-day life. Reading a book, for example, like Atomic Habits, Loon Shots. These things give you so many ideas that you can implement. You could even say that today, while going to work, at least 3 mornings in a week, I will not look at my phone, but in fact, watch my surroundings intently and really look at how things are evolving. So if there is a tree without flowers today, next week, maybe the flowers are coming back. But unless you make it a point that I will look outside the window at this particular instant and not look at my phone, or really create that gap, that space of boredom. Actually, this is also a very powerful concept about being bored. So not filling your time up with so many things that you don't leave any room for creativity. Okay, and then there's this a separate thing about writing a need statement. We could talk about it maybe later, how to really write that down, how to define those needs, how to brainstorm solutions. You can have a goal like, I will draw more, I will sing more, I will practice music more, I will learn a new skill every month. And in fact, you might have already more action plans and goals and this is the platform to share with everyone so that all of us can grow. So with that, it's almost the last slide, and I could not stop myself from not adding anything related to AI and ChatGPT and other, models. So one thing that we were talking about is wearing different hats or looking at things from different perspectives. So there are, this is a person on LinkedIn, if you want to follow. He's not related to me. I don't know him personally, but there are many like him. His name is Sam Schusen, who writes things like these. So basically, you prompt ChatGPT with a particular really nicely written prompt where it can act as policy finder, domain creator, tech reviewer, anything that you want it to become like, and then it will tell you the pros and cons and the problem from different angles. So you can take the help of technology nowadays, but also at the same time hone your own skills. So do that yourself, and also you could take some help. And if you don't have a cohort, I think it's best to work with people, real people from different walks of life. If you have that, it's really great. If you don't have that, you can even take help from different medium. So with that, I come to the last takeaway message of all of us being like SpongeBob and Sponge Babes, where we should all observe and absorb everything around us like a child. Coming back, we can all maybe unmute ourselves and let's get to know each other better. It's an open floor now. I'm welcoming comments, questions, feedback, and anything that you wish to share. I'm very happy to be connected offline as well. Please go ahead. Who wants to start by telling me what they thought about, coming back to the first slide, what is the color of an apple? What is the first thing that you thought about?
So the first thing I thought about the color of was actually of different colors on an apple, and it depends on the type, and it depends on the ripening process. And when I link that to your presentation about where you talked about how do you know your best working self, and also your tips and tricks, if I make an analogy there between the apple and how do you know your best working self and tips and tricks, I think for everyone in the call, we're all evolving, and your working self changes over time as well, and also which tips and tricks work for you. So like the apple, it's not fixed, it changes. And therefore it's interesting to look at these things and see what works for me now, because it might be something different than 2 years ago, and it might be something in 5 years. But thank you very much for, for those things. I found it very interesting.